All the mechanics failed to fix the Korean Mafia boss's $10 million car until a black waitress stepped in and solved the issue within 5 minutes. The afternoon sun glinted off the Pagani Huayra BC's carbon fiber body, turning the $10 million hypercar into a work of art sitting dead in the middle of Seattle's Pioneer Square. Lunchtime traffic crawled around it, horns blaring, drivers craning their necks to stare at the exotic machine that had chosen the worst possible moment to die. Choi Sin. Ju stood beside his car, jaw tight with controlled fury, checking his Patek Philippe for the 4th time in 3 minutes. 1:47 p.m. He had exactly 13 minutes to make a meeting with the Yamamoto family, 13 minutes to cross downtown Seattle and finalize an alliance that had taken 6 months to negotiate. Being late wasn't an option. Showing weakness in front of the Japanese Yakuzawa wasn't an option. But his $10 million statement of power and precision had other ideas. "Boss, the backup car is stuck in traffic from the container yard," Kwon Dae-jung said, phone pressed to his ear, sweat beading his forehead despite the cool October air. "At least 25 minutes out. Should I call Yamamoto-san and—" "No." Sinju's voice was ice. 28 years old, leader of the Choi family for 3 years, every decision scrutinized by rivals waiting for him to fail. "Get someone who can fix this. Now." Dae-jung was already moving, snapping orders in Korean to the 5 other men in black suits who'd materialized around the car like a protective wall. Within minutes, a tow truck pulled up. Not to tow, but carrying a mechanic who climbed out with the wary expression of someone who'd been promised excellent money for an emergency call. The mechanic, middle-aged, wearing coveralls with Pete's Automotive embroidered on the chest, approached the Pagani like it was a museum piece he wasn't allowed to touch, which, given the car's value, wasn't far from the truth. "Mr. Choi?" Pete's voice cracked slightly. I'll take a look. But sir, this is a Pagani. I've never actually worked on one of these before. They're not exactly common." "Figure it out," Sinju said flatly. "You have 10 minutes. Pete's hands shook as he popped the hood, revealing an engine that looked more like a piece of modern sculpture than machinery. All exposed carbon fiber, titanium, and engineering that pushed the boundaries of physics. He stared at it for a long moment, then pulled out a diagnostic scanner that looked woefully inadequate for the task. "The engine management system? Jesus, this is all proprietary. I don't even know where to start. The computer interface alone—" Pete wiped sweat from his forehead. "Sir, I'm sorry, but I think you need a Pagani specialist. There's an exotic car dealer in Bellevue that might—" 20 minutes away, Dae-jung muttered. "Minimum." Sin. Ju checked his watch again. 1:51 p.m., 9 minutes until a meeting that could mean the difference between alliance and war, between strength and the appearance of weakness that would have every rival family in the Pacific Northwest testing his defenses. A second mechanic arrived, younger this time, cocky, rolling up in a BMW with Elite Auto plastered across the side. He took one look at the Pagani and actually laughed. "Holy shit, a Huayra BC. Man, I've only seen these in magazines." He circled the car like a shark, professional appreciation mixing with intimidation. "Pop the hood?" He spent 5 minutes poking at the engine, running diagnostics with equipment that was better than Pete's but still clearly inadequate. His confidence bled away with each passing second. "Mr. Choi, I'm straight with you. This car's computer system is beyond what I've got here. It's throwing error codes I've never seen, and the fuel management system is completely encrypted. Without Pagani, specific diagnostic software, and probably a direct line to the factory in Italy." He shook his head. "I'm sorry, man. This is out of my league." Sinju's phone buzzed. A text from his second-in-command, Yamamoto-san asking for ETA, suggesting we reschedule if there's a problem. Reschedule. The polite way of saying, if you can't even show up on time, maybe you're not worth doing business with. The kind of small crack that could fracture an entire alliance. "Get it towed," Sinju said, fury carefully controlled beneath a mask of calm. "I'll take a cab to the meeting." "Boss, arriving in a taxi?" Dae-jung's expression was pained. "I know what it looks like. Do it anyway." Sinju pulled out his phone to call Yamamoto, to make excuses, to show the exact kind of weakness he'd sworn never to display. "Excuse me." The voice came from behind him, female, American accent with a hint of southern warmth. Sinju turned, expecting a gawker or someone asking for a photo with the expensive car. Instead, he found himself looking at a young black woman in a waitress uniform, black slacks, white button-down shirt, apron with Cornerstone Bistro embroidered across the front. She was maybe 26, with natural hair pulled back in a ponytail, warm brown eyes, and grease stains on her hands that she was wiping with a rag. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, addressing Sinju directly with the kind of confidence that suggested she had no idea who he was or why 6 men in suits surrounded this car like it was the president. "But I work across the street," she gestured to a restaurant with outdoor seating, "and I couldn't help noticing you're having trouble. Mind if I take a look?" Dead silence. The mechanic stared. Dai Yung's hand moved instinctively toward his jacket, toward the gun Sin Ju knew he carried. The other men shifted, creating a subtle wall between Sinju and this random waitress who just walked up like she belonged here. "Ma'am, this is a private matter," Dae Young said, voice polite but firm. "Please step back." The woman, Georgia, her name tag read, didn't step back. Instead, she looked directly at Sin Ju, ignoring the wall of intimidating men like they were furniture. "Sir, I know this is going to sound weird, but I actually know cars. Really know them. And if your mechanics can't figure it out, you've got nothing to lose by letting me look. 5 minutes tops." "You're a waitress," one of the mechanics, Pete, said, not quite laughing but close. "No offense, but this is a $10 million hypercar with a twin-turbo V12 and systems that require factory training to even understand. Twin-turbo V12 with titanium intake valves, carbon titanium connecting rods, and a 7-speed sequential gearbox." Georgia interrupted, not looking at Pete, but keeping her eyes on Sinju. "AMG-sourced engine, extensively modified by Pagani. And I'm guessing from the sound it made before it died, or lack thereof, you're looking at either a fuel pump failure or an issue with the engine management computer." Now everyone was staring. Sinju felt his eyebrows rise slightly, the first genuine surprise he'd felt in months. "How do you know that?" he asked. "My dad owned a restoration shop in Atlanta. European exotics, high-end classics. I grew up in that garage, learned engines before I learned algebra." Georgia shrugged, like this was the most normal thing in the world. "Worked there through college until he passed and we had to sell the business. Now I serve overpriced pasta to tech bros, but I still know my way around an engine, especially Italian ones." Sinju studied her. 26, maybe 27, grease under her fingernails despite the waitress uniform. The casual confidence of someone who actually knew what she was talking about, not the false bravado of someone trying to impress. 1:54 p.m., 6 minutes until his meeting. His options were arrive late in a taxi looking weak or let a random waitress poke at his $10 million car on the off chance she actually knew what she was doing. 5 minutes, he said. "You touch the wrong thing, you're paying for it." George's smile was quick and bright. "Deal. Pop the hood." The mechanics looked scandalized. Dae-jung looked like he wanted to protest but knew better. The hood was already open from Pete's failed attempt, so Georgia moved past the wall of suited men, like they weren't there, and leaned over the Pagani's engine bay. "Okay, beautiful," she murmured, and Sinju realized she was talking to the car. "Let's see what's got you sulking." She didn't grab tools immediately. Instead, she just looked, really looked, at the engine, eyes tracking connections, her head tilting as she processed what she saw. Then her hands moved with surprising confidence, checking connections, testing sensors, her movements efficient and practiced. "Your diagnostic scanner picking up any codes?" she asked Pete without looking at him. Yeah, multiple. Fuel system fault, electrical system fault, engine management, all cascading from one source probably." George's fingers found something near the back of the engine bay. "There. Your main engine harness connector. See this?" She gestured, and Sinju found himself moving closer, despite himself, drawn by the certainty in her voice. She pointed to a connection that looked fine to his untrained eye. "This connector has a sealing issue. Moisture got in, probably from this morning's rain, and it's causing intermittent connection loss. The engine computer thinks it's getting faulty sensor data, so it's shutting everything down to protect the engine. It's actually a safety feature working exactly as designed." "If it's disconnected, why isn't it obvious?" the second mechanic asked, skeptical. "Because it's not fully disconnected. It's making just enough contact to confuse the system, but not enough to work properly. The computer can't tell if it's a real sensor problem or a connection issue, so it defaults to safe mode. Georgia was already reaching for the connection. I need something to dry this with, and some dielectric grease if you've got it. I don't carry dielectric grease for $10 million cars, Pete said flatly. I do. Georgia pulled a small tube from her apron pocket, and Sinju definitely saw smirks on his men's faces. This waitress walked around with specialized automotive supplies in her uniform. Learn to keep it on hand after Dad's shop had a Ferrari die on us the same way. Always be prepared. She worked quickly, confidently, disconnecting the harness, drying the connection points with her rag, applying a thin layer of grease, then reconnecting everything with a firm click. The whole process took maybe 90 seconds. Try starting it now, she said, stepping back. Sinju slid into the driver's seat, leather interior that cost more than most people's cars, steering wheel wrapped in exposed carbon fiber, dashboard that looked like a fighter jet cockpit. He turned the key and the engine roared to life, not just started, roared. 760 horsepower of Italian engineering thundering awake, twin turbos spooling up with that distinctive whistle, the whole car vibrating with barely contained power. Every gauge came alive, all error lights extinguished, the Pagani suddenly whole again. Ju sat there for a moment, genuinely shocked. Then he climbed out of the car to find Georgia wiping her hands on her rag, looking satisfied. Told you, 5 minutes. She glanced at his watch, which he was checking automatically. 1:56. Still time to make your meeting. Drive safe. Take it easy for the first few miles while the computer relearns everything. She turned to leave, heading back toward the restaurant like she'd just given directions instead of fixing a problem that two professional mechanics couldn't solve. Wait, Sinju called. Georgia paused, turned back. What do I owe you? She blinked like the question surprised her. Nothing. I was on break anyway, just glad I could help. Nothing. Sinju repeated the word like it was foreign. In his world, everything had a price. Everyone wanted something. You just fixed a $10 million car for nothing. I fixed a car for a guy who needed help. The price tag doesn't change that. Georgia's smile was easy, genuine. Besides, it was fun. I don't get to work on Paganis serving salmon salads. This made my day. She actually waved, casual and friendly, and headed back across the street, disappearing into Cornerstone Bistro while Sinju stood beside his now running hypercar, completely bemused. Boss, Dai Young said quietly, you need to leave for the meeting. Yes. Sinju climbed back into the Pagani, started the engine again just to hear it roar, checked his watch. 1:57 p.m. 3 minutes. But he could make it if traffic cooperated. The mechanics were still standing there, looking bewildered and slightly embarrassed. Pete shook his head. I'll be damned. A waitress just schooled both of us. Not just a waitress, Sinju murmured, already pulling into traffic. Something more. He made the meeting with 30 seconds to spare. The Yamamoto alliance was secured, and everything went exactly as planned. But through the entire negotiation, through dinner afterward and drinks with the Japanese delegation, Sinju kept thinking about warm brown eyes and confident hands, and a woman who'd fixed his $10 million car and asked for nothing in return. It bothered him. Everything had a price. Everyone wanted something. Georgia had wanted nothing. That was extraordinary. Sinju went back to Cornerstone Bistro the next day at lunch. He told himself it was because the restaurant had good reviews, because it was convenient, because he needed to eat anyway and this place was as good as any. He definitely wasn't going back to see if the waitress with the grease-stained hands was real or if he'd imagined the whole impossible scenario. The bistro was upscale, casual, exposed brick, Edison bulbs, the kind of place that served $12 sandwiches to tech workers and called it artisanal. The lunch rush was in full swing, every table occupied, servers moving with practiced efficiency. And there she was. Georgia moved between tables with the same confidence she'd shown working on his engine. Efficient, capable, completely present. She was taking an order from a table of business people, laughing at something one of them said, her whole face lighting up with genuine warmth. Sinju sat at a table in her section, deliberately. Dai Young and two other men took the table beside him. They never let him eat alone, always maintaining security even in something as mundane as lunch. Georgia approached his table, order pad in hand, professional smile already in place. Then she saw him and the smile transformed into something more real. The Pagani guy. She looked genuinely happy to see him. How's the car running? Any more issues? Perfect, your fix held. Sinju found himself smiling slightly, which felt strange. He didn't smile often these days. I wanted to thank you properly and to pay you for your time. Oh, you don't need to. I insist. He pulled out his wallet, extracted $500 bills, folded neatly, extended across the table. For your expertise. Georgia stared at the money like it might bite her. Sir, that's $2,500 for 5 minutes of work. That's completely excessive. It's what two professional mechanics couldn't do. What would have cost me far more than money if I'd missed my meeting? Sin-ju kept the bills extended. Please take it. I can't accept that. It's too much. But George's eyes lingered on the money. Just for a second, just long enough for Sin-ju to see the want there, the need quickly buried under pride and principle. Then consider it a tip, he said, for excellent service. I haven't even served you lunch yet. Georgia laughed, but she was wavering. Look, how about this? You eat here, let me actually do my job, and then we'll talk about reasonable compensation. Deal? Sinju withdrew the money, tucked it back in his wallet. Deal. What do you recommend? They talked for 3 minutes, Georgia explaining the menu, suggesting the blackened salmon, asking about dietary restrictions with the professional ease of someone who'd done this 10,000 times. But there was something else in her eyes now, a spark of recognition that he wasn't just another customer. You're not from around here, she observed. The accent, Korean, right? Yes, Seoul originally, though I've been in Seattle for 5 years now. What brings you to the States, if you don't mind me asking? Family business, Sinju said, which was technically true. Import-export, trade relations. Also technically true if you considered smuggling and protection rackets trade relations. Georgia nodded like this made perfect sense. Well, welcome to Seattle. It's a good city once you get used to the rain. I'll get your order in. She moved away to help other tables, and Sinju found himself watching her work. The easy way she connected with customers, remembering names and preferences, the efficiency of her movements, the genuine warmth that seemed to come naturally. Boss, Daejung murmured from the next table, voice low enough only Sinju could hear. Is there a reason we're eating here specifically? The food is supposed to be good. Uh-huh. Daejung's tone suggested he didn't believe that for a second. And the waitress who fixed your $10 million car yesterday? That's just a coincidence? Sinju didn't answer, which was answer enough. Lunch was excellent. The salmon was perfectly cooked, the side vegetables fresh and flavorful, everything presented with care. But Sinju barely tasted it. He was too busy watching Georgia work, trying to understand why this random waitress had captured his attention so completely. She brought his check after the meal, and Sinju handed her his card along with those same $500 bills. The money is separate from the meal. A thank you for yesterday, please. Georgia looked at the cash, then at him, conflict clear on her face. Why? Why does it matter so much that you pay me for something I was happy to do for free? Because I don't like owing debts. You don't owe me anything. She pushed the money back across the table. You want to thank me? Come back and eat here again. Tell your friends if the food's good. Leave an honest review online. That helps me way more than cash. She walked away before he could argue further, and Sinju was left holding $2,500 and a growing fascination with the woman who kept refusing it. She's interesting, Dae-young observed as they left. Stubborn? Very, Sinju agreed, and smiled. He went back the next day, and the day after that. By the end of the week, the bistro staff recognized him on sight. They saved him his preferred table, corner spot with a good view of the entire restaurant. Dae-young and security at the adjacent table. The owner, a friendly middle-aged woman named Margaret, started greeting him personally, and Georgia served him every time, their conversations growing longer with each visit. He learned she was 26, from Atlanta originally, had moved to Seattle 3 years ago for a relationship that hadn't worked out. She'd stayed because she liked the city, liked the energy, liked being somewhere that felt alive and constantly evolving. Don't you miss your family? Sinju asked over lunch on Thursday, his 5th visit in 5 days. Every day, Georgia admitted, but Mom's got my brothers, and they're scattered anyway. Marcus is in the Army station in Germany. Julian's doing his residency in Chicago. We're a Zoom call family now. She refilled his water glass. What about you? Family back in Korea? No, my family is here. Sin Ju thought about his organization, 50 men who depended on him, who he was responsible for protecting. Family of a different kind. It's complicated. Family usually is. George's smile was understanding. You come here a lot for someone just passing through Seattle. Business must be going well. Business is progressing. But I come here because the food is excellent. He met her eyes. And the service is extraordinary. Heat colored George's cheeks. Just slightly, just enough to be charming. Flattery will get you extra bread, Mr. Choi. Sin Ju, please. We've shared 5 lunches now. I think we're past formality. Sin Ju, George attested the name, her American accent making it sound slightly different, but not wrong. Okay, but only if you call me Georgia instead of Miss, like I'm your grandmother. Georgia. He liked the way it felt in his mouth. It's unusual. Is it a family name? State name. Mom was convinced she was having a boy, had Marcus and Julian already named. Then surprise. I showed up and she panicked. She and Dad had met at a jazz festival in Savannah, so Georgia could have been worse. Could have been Savannah. Sin. Ju found himself laughing, actually laughing, a sound so rare that Dae-jung literally looked up from his own meal in shock. What? Georgia asked, smiling at his laughter. You don't think Savannah suits me? I think Georgia is perfect. The words came out more sincere than he'd intended, and something shifted in the air between them. Georgia's smile softened, her eyes holding his for a beat longer than casual. I should check on my other table, she said finally, breaking the moment. But Sin Ju? I'm really glad you keep coming back. It's nice, having someone to talk to who isn't just ordering and leaving. She moved away and Sin Ju sat there feeling like he'd been kicked in the chest. Because somewhere between fixing his car and 5 daily lunch visits, this had become something more than gratitude or curiosity. He was falling for her, hard and fast and completely inconvenient. You need to stop, Dae-jung said as they drove back to the office that afternoon. Boss, with all respect, you need to stop going to that restaurant. The food is good. The food is fine. You're going for the waitress. Dae-jung's voice was careful but firm. And that's dangerous. Dangerous how? She doesn't know who you are, what you do. You're lying to her by omission every time you sit in that bistro and pretend you're just a normal businessman. Dae-jung navigated traffic, jaw tight. And when she finds out, because she will find out, what do you think happens? Sin? Ju didn't answer because he'd asked himself the same question every night this week. Georgia thought he was just a wealthy businessman, probably tech sector given Seattle's economy. She had no idea about the organization, the violence, the reality of who Choi Sin-ju actually was. Plus, there's the security issue, Dae-jung continued. You're establishing a pattern. Same place, same time, 5 days in a row. Anyone watching could exploit that, could target the restaurant, could use her. No one knows, Sin-ju cut him off. We've been careful. Boss, you drive a $10 million car and travel with armed security. People notice. And if the wrong people connect you to that waitress, if they see her as leverage, Dae-jung's voice was pained. I can't protect her if she doesn't know she needs protection. Sin-ju knew he was right, knew this was reckless and selfish and potentially dangerous for Georgia. But he kept seeing her smile, hearing her laugh, feeling the way conversation with her came so easily despite all the lies of omission between them. 1 more week, he heard himself say. I'll figure out what this is and then decide what to do about it. And if you're in too deep by then I'll deal with the consequences. The following Monday, Sin-ju arrived at Cornerstone Bistro at his usual time, 12:30 p.m., early enough to beat the worst of the lunch rush, to find Georgia wasn't there. Instead, a young man Sin-ju didn't recognize worked her section. When Sin-ju asked about Georgia, the server's expression turned sympathetic. Georgia called in sick this morning. First time in like 8 months. Must be really under the weather. Sin-ju ate lunch mechanically, barely tasting his food, worry gnawing at him in a way that was completely irrational. She was sick. People got sick. It meant nothing, except he found himself asking Margaret, the owner, as he paid his check. Georgia, is she all right? Is there anything she needs? Margaret's expression softened with understanding that made Sin-ju uncomfortable. She clearly knew exactly why he was asking. She'll be fine. Probably just a bad cold. But it's sweet of you to worry, Mr. Choi. He left the restaurant, got in his car, and made it 3 blocks before turning around. Boss? Daejung's voice was carefully neutral. Where are we going? I need an address. Boss? Georgia's address. Find it. Now. It took Daejung's people 15 minutes. Georgia lived in a modest apartment building in Capitol Hill, 4th-floor walk-up, rent probably eating most of her paycheck. Sinju had never been to this neighborhood, had no business being there, was making every security mistake in the book. He went anyway. The building's security door was propped open, fire code violation that Sinju noted automatically. The stairwell smelled like old cooking and cleaning products. George's apartment was 4C, and Sinju stood outside it for a full minute before knocking. Coming, George's voice called, hoarse and congested. The door opened, and she stood there in sweats and an oversized tee, shirt that read, Atlanta Motorsports in faded letters, her hair wrapped in a silk scarf, eyes red and watery, nose raw from tissues. She stared at Sinju like he was a hallucination. Sinju? What? How did you? You weren't at lunch. I asked Margaret if you were okay, and she said you were sick, and He trailed off, realizing how this looked. I wanted to make sure you had everything you needed. Georgia blinked, swayed slightly, and Sinju realized she had a legitimate fever. Her skin was flushed, sweat beading her forehead despite the cool apartment. You came to check on me, she said slowly, like processing each word individually. You came to my apartment to check if I needed anything, because I wasn't at work. Yes, that's... Georgia laughed, which turned into a coughing fit that made Sinju wince. That's either really sweet or really creepy, and I can't decide which because my brain feels like soup. Have you eaten? Taken medication? Seen a doctor? I had toast this morning. There's some Dayquil somewhere, and I can't afford a doctor for a cold. Sinju, I'll be fine in a few days. Can't afford a doctor. The words hit Sinju like a physical blow. He spent more on a single dinner than she probably made in a week, and she was lying in her apartment with a fever because seeing a doctor was a financial impossibility. Can I come in? He asked. Georgia looked at him, at Dae-young and the other men waiting discreetly by the stairs, then back at Sinju. Are you going to murder me? Because I'm too sick to put up a good fight, and I'd like advance warning. I'm not going to murder you. I'm going to make sure you're properly taken care of. She stepped back, letting him in. The apartment was tiny, studio with a kitchen alcove, bathroom barely big enough to turn around in, everything clean but clearly old. A futon served as both couch and bed. Textbooks on automotive engineering were stacked on a makeshift desk. Photos of her family covered one wall, her with 2 men who must be her brothers, her with an older couple who had to be her parents. It's not much, Georgia said, embarrassment clear in her voice, but it's home. Sinju turned to find her swaying again, clearly running on fumes. Sit, please. When did you last eat something substantial? Yesterday? Maybe? Georgia collapsed onto the futon. I've been too nauseous to have an appetite. Sinju pulled out his phone, made 2 calls. The first to his doctor, a man on retainer who made house calls. No questions asked. The second to a restaurant that would deliver exactly what Georgia needed. What are you doing? Georgia asked, watching him with fever-glazed eyes. Taking care of you. A doctor's on the way and food will be here in 30 minutes. Sinju, I said I can't afford... I can. He sat beside her on the futon, close enough to feel the heat radiating from her fever. Georgia, you fixed my $10 million car and refused payment. Let me do this, please. This is crazy. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're stubborn and brilliant, and you work yourself to exhaustion serving people who don't appreciate you. I know you have a gift for mechanics that you're wasting because life didn't give you better options. And I know, he paused, choosing words carefully. I know that I would like to know you better. Much better, if you'll let me. Georgia stared at him, fever stupid and processing slowly. Are you asking me out while I'm sick and delirious? Because that feels like cheating. I'm being honest. Something I should have done sooner. Sinju took a breath. Georgia, I'm not just a businessman. My family's operations are complicated. There are things about me you don't know, things that might make you want to keep your distance. Like what? You're secretly married, part of a cult, a serial killer. Like my business involves activities that exist outside normal legal channels. Like I'm the head of an organization that operates in spaces most people don't even know exist. Like dating me would mean stepping into a world that's potentially dangerous. George's eyes focused slightly, fever fog clearing just enough to process. You're saying you're a criminal. I'm saying it's complicated. But yes, by most definitions. Silence stretched out. Sin Ju waited for her to kick him out, to show the fear or disgust that most civilians displayed when confronted with his reality. Instead, Georgia laughed. Weak but genuine. Of course, the first guy I'm actually interested in after a year of nothing turns out to be some kind of mob boss. That's exactly my luck. You're interested? The words came out more hopefully than Sin Ju intended. Sin Ju, you've come to lunch every day for a week. You tracked down my address because I called in sick. You're currently arranging medical care I can't afford while confessing to being a criminal so I can make an informed decision about you. Yes, I'm interested. I'm also possibly delirious with fever, so check back when I'm coherent to see if I still feel the same way. Before Sinjo could respond, his doctor arrived. Dr. Lee, carrying a medical bag and wearing the expression of someone who'd learned not to ask questions. He examined Georgia professionally, diagnosed a severe flu, prescribed medication, and rest. She'll need monitoring for the next 48 hours, Dr. Lee said as he packed up. The fever's high enough to be concerning. Someone should check on her regularly, make sure she's hydrated and eating. I'll arrange it, Sinju said, already planning. Georgia opened her mouth to protest, and he cut her off gently. No arguments. You're sick, you live alone, and you need help. Let me provide it. The food arrived, soup from a Korean restaurant, easy on the stomach, along with medication from a pharmacy. Sin Ju helped Georgia eat, made sure she took the medicine, and didn't leave until she was asleep on the futon, fever finally breaking slightly. Boss, Date Young said quietly as they descended the stairs, this is getting complicated. I know. And you're not stopping. No, I'm not. Because somewhere between a broken-down Pagani and a tiny studio apartment, Sin Ju had crossed a line. He'd gone from curious to fascinated to something that felt dangerously close to falling in love. And God helped them both. But he wasn't walking away now. Sin Ju arranged for a nurse, Mrs. Park, a Korean woman in her 50s who asked no questions and carried herself with quiet competence, to stay with Georgia for the next 2 days. He visited every morning and evening, bringing food, checking her fever, sitting beside her futon while she slept fitfully. You don't have to keep coming, Georgia said on the second night, voice still hoarse but stronger. The fever had broken that afternoon, leaving her exhausted but clear-headed. Mrs. Park is taking excellent care of me, better than I could afford in 10 years of waitressing. I want to be here, Sinju said simply. He was sitting in the apartment's only chair, a rickety thing from a thrift store, while Georgia was propped up on the futon surrounded by pillows Mrs. Park had conjured from somewhere. Why? Georgia asked. And I want the real answer this time, not the polite, you fixed my car excuse. Why are you really here, Sin? Ju? He'd been asking himself the same question. Why did the head of the Choi family, a man responsible for 50 people's livelihoods and safety, keep returning to this tiny studio apartment? Why did he care so much about a woman he'd known for barely 2 weeks? Because when I'm with you, I'm just Sin Ju, he said finally. Not the boss, not the successor to my father's legacy, not the person everyone needs something from. Just myself. And I haven't felt that way in years. Georgia studied him with those warm brown eyes, seeing too much. What happened to your parents? Car accident. 5 years ago. My father was driving, my mother beside him. A truck ran a red light. The words came out flat, emotionless. The only way Sinju could say them without breaking. I was 23 in graduate school at Stanford, planning to get my MBA and maybe work in legitimate business. And then I got a call, and suddenly I was the head of the Choi family with responsibilities I'd never wanted. I'm sorry, Georgia said softly. Losing both parents at once. I can't even imagine. Your father. You mentioned he passed. How long ago? 3 years. Heart attack in the garage, working on a '67 Shelby GT500. He died doing what he loved, surrounded by engines and chrome. George's smile was sad. We had to sell the shop to pay medical bills and funeral costs. Mom moved in with Marcus in Germany, and I came to Seattle with my ex, who left 6 months later because I was too focused on working and not enough on him. He was an idiot, Sinju said flatly. Georgia laughed, the sound stronger now. He was, but it worked out. I like Seattle. Like the rain, the coffee culture, the way the city feels alive. And working at Cornerstone isn't forever. I'm saving up, taking online courses in automotive engineering, planning to eventually open my own shop. Your own shop? Sinju leaned forward. Tell me about it. And she did. For the next hour, Georgia described her dream, a restoration shop specializing in European exotics and classic American muscle cars, a place that honored her father's legacy while building something uniquely hers. She talked about the equipment she'd need, the connections she was slowly building, the certifications she was working toward. Her passion was infectious, her knowledge deep and genuine. Sinju found himself asking questions, offering suggestions, mentally calculating how much capital she'd need and how long it would take at her current savings rate. Too long. Decades, probably. She'd be middle-aged before she had enough saved, assuming no emergencies or setbacks. The unfairness of it burned in his chest. What if you didn't have to wait? He asked carefully. George's expression shifted, becoming guarded. Sinju, if you're offering money, not offering, investing. Georgia, you have expertise that's incredibly rare. The ability to diagnose and fix complex systems that most mechanics can't even understand. That's valuable. That could be profitable. Profitable for who? For you and for me. Sinju was already forming the idea, pieces falling into place. My organization has vehicles, expensive ones, exotic ones, cars that require specialized maintenance and discretion. What if I became your first major client, provided the capital to open your shop in exchange for exclusive service? Georgia sat up straighter, fever weakness forgotten. You're serious. Completely. I'd cover startup costs, space, equipment, initial operating budget. You'd run the shop, make all decisions, keep all profits after paying back my investment. I'd contract for maintenance on my fleet, pay premium rates for the discretion. And the catch? Because there's always a catch. The catch is that you'd be connected to me, to my world. That comes with complications and potential risks. Risks like what? Sinju chose his words carefully. Like rival organizations noticing that I'm investing in you. Like people who want to hurt me seeing you as a potential target. Like the reality that my business sometimes involves violence and danger that could spill over into your life. Georgia was quiet for a long moment, processing. Your organization. We're talking about the Korean Mafia, aren't we? That's what you meant by complicated. Yes. And you're the boss, the guy in charge. Yes. So dating you, working with you, building a business connected to you, that's not just complicated, that's potentially dangerous. Yes, which is why I'm being honest now, before this goes any further. I won't lie to you, Georgia. I won't pretend I'm something I'm not. You deserve to know exactly what you'd be getting into. Georgia pulled her knees up to her chest, thinking hard. What does your organization actually do? I need specifics, not vague, it's complicated answers. Protection services for Korean businesses in the Pacific Northwest, import operations that sometimes exist in legal gray areas, enforcement of agreements that can't go through traditional legal channels. Sinju met her eyes steadily. We don't deal drugs, we don't traffic people, we don't hurt civilians, but we do operate outside the law when necessary. Have you killed anyone? The question was direct, unflinching. Sinju appreciated that. Not personally, but I've given orders that resulted in people dying. People who threatened my family, my organization, who wouldn't stop any other way. Jesus, Georgia pressed her hands to her face. This is insane. I should be running away. I should be calling the police, or at least telling you to leave and never come back. You should, Sinju agreed. You absolutely should. And I'll respect that choice completely. But Georgia, I need you to know, I'm trying to be better. To transition toward legitimate operations, to build something that doesn't require violence. That's part of why I want to invest in your shop. Building legitimate businesses, supporting good people, that's how I move away from what my father built. And in the meantime, while you're transitioning, in the meantime, I protect what's mine, which would include you if you let it. Georgia looked at him, really looked, searching for something in his expression. Why me? You could invest in any mechanic, date any woman. Why are you so focused on me? Because you're brilliant and don't realize it. Because you fixed my $10 million car in 5 minutes and asked for nothing. Because you're the first person in years who looks at me and sees a person instead of a threat or an opportunity. Sin Ju's voice dropped. Because when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to want something beyond survival and obligation. Silence stretched between them, heavy with possibility and danger. I need time, Georgia said finally, to think about this. All of it. The shop, the relationship, the risks. I need to process when I'm not sick and delirious. Take all the time you need. Sinju stood, preparing to leave. I'll have Mrs. Park stay one more night. Make sure you're fully recovered. And Georgia, thank you for not immediately saying no. That's more than I had any right to hope for. He was at the door when Georgia called his name. Sinju? He turned back. Come back tomorrow. When I'm thinking clearly, we'll talk more. His heart did something complicated in his chest. I'll be here. Sinju returned to his office, a penthouse suite overlooking Elliott Bay, all glass and steel and carefully curated power. Dai Jung was waiting with updates. A territorial dispute with a Chinese gang needed resolution. The monthly protection payments were coming in short from 3 businesses, and there was a potential opportunity to expand into Tacoma. But Sinju's mind was on a tiny studio apartment and a woman who looked at his worst truth and hadn't run. Yet, boss, you need to focus, Dai Jung said carefully. The situation with the Red Dragon Gang is escalating. They're pushing into our territory on Jackson Street, and if we don't respond, then we respond, but not with violence. Not yet. Sinju moved to the window, watching lights sparkle across the water. Set up a meeting. Neutral ground. We negotiate boundaries before anyone gets hurt. Dai Jung's eyebrows rose. Negotiate? Boss, they've already shown disrespect. The old way would be to send a message with broken bones and burning property, and then they'd retaliate, and we'd escalate, and eventually people die over a 6-block territory dispute. Sinju turned to face his second in command. I'm tired of the old way. Set up the meeting. This is about the waitress, isn't it? Dai Jung's voice wasn't judgmental, just observing. She's making you soft. She's making me think about the kind of man I want to be. There's a difference. The meeting with the Red Dragon Gang happened 2 days later in a private room at a dim sum restaurant. Neutral territory, no weapons, translators present. The Dragon's leader was a man named Chen Wei, 40-something, with scars that suggested he'd earned his position the hard way. You want to negotiate, Chen said, amusement and contempt mixing in his tone. The Choi family wants to talk instead of fight. Your father would be ashamed. My father died defending territory through violence. I'd rather build something that lasts. Sinju kept his voice level, refusing to take the bait. Jackson Street has enough business for both organizations. We divide it fairly, set clear boundaries, everyone profits. Or we fight over it, draw police attention, and both lose money while our people bleed. And if I prefer fighting? Chen leaned back, studying Sin. Ju, if I think the young Choi boss is weak, that now is the time to take what I want, then you'd be making a mistake. Sinju's voice went cold, dangerous. I'm offering negotiation because it's smarter. But make no mistake, I will protect what's mine. The question is whether we build peace or bodies. Your choice. Something shifted in Chen's expression. Respect, maybe, or at least recognition of resolve. They talked for 2 hours, eventually hammering out an agreement that divided Jackson Street territory, set clear boundaries, established protocols for dispute resolution. You're not your father, Chen said as they finalized terms. Don't know yet if that's good or bad for the rest of us. Time will tell, Sinju agreed. He left the meeting feeling lighter than he had in months. One conflict resolved without violence. One step toward the man he wanted to become. The man Georgia might be willing to build something with. Georgia called him that evening. Can you come over? I've been thinking, and we should talk. Sinju arrived 30 minutes later, heart hammering with nervousness he hadn't felt since he was a teenager. Georgia answered the door looking healthier. Color back in her cheeks, eyes clear, dressed in jeans and a t-shirt that read, I void warranties. Nice shirt, he said, buying time. Dad's. I wear it when I need to feel brave. Georgia stepped back, letting him in. The apartment was cleaner, more organized, like she'd been stress cleaning while thinking. So, I've been doing a lot of processing, and and I think you're either the best opportunity I'll ever get or the worst mistake I could possibly make. Maybe both. Georgia sat on the futon, gestured for Sinju to take the chair. I've been researching your organization, what you do, the risks involved, and I have questions. Ask me anything. If I open this shop with your investment, if we build a business relationship, what happens when your enemies come after you? Do I become a target? Possibly, which is why I'd provide security, discreet but present, and why the shop would be completely legitimate, properly licensed, with clean finances, nothing that could be used against either of us legally. And if someone tries to hurt you through me anyway, then I respond with everything I have. Georgia, I won't let anyone hurt you. That's a promise. Promises are easy. Actions matter. Georgia leaned forward. Here's what I need. Complete transparency. If there's a threat, if something's happening in your world that could affect me, I need to know immediately. No protecting me by keeping me in the dark. Agreed. Second, the shop is mine. My decisions, my vision, my rules. You can be a client, an investor, but you don't get to control how I run things. Absolutely, that was always the plan. Third, if I say stop, we stop. If this gets too dangerous or too complicated, or if I decide I can't handle it, you respect that decision. No pressure, no guilt, no trying to convince me otherwise. Sinju nodded slowly. I can agree to that. But Georgia, I need you to understand. Once you're in my world, even peripherally, you can't completely leave it. People will know we're connected. That doesn't go away just because we stop working together or dating. So this is a one-way door. Once I walk through, I'm in whether I like it or not. Yes, which is why I need you to be absolutely certain before we move forward with anything. Georgia was quiet for a long moment, conflict clear on her face. My dad used to say that the biggest regrets in life aren't the risks you take. They're the opportunities you let fear steal from you. He'd tell me to go for it, to build the shop, to take the chance. But he also taught me to be smart about risk, to calculate odds, prepare for worst-case scenarios, never bet more than I could afford to lose. She met Sinju's eyes. How do I calculate the odds on falling for a crime boss who's trying to go legitimate? You're falling for me? The words came out more hopeful than Sinju intended. Don't act surprised. You've been wooing me with home-cooked Korean soup and personal doctors and investment opportunities. What did you think would happen? Sinju smiled. Genuine, warm, the kind of expression that had become rare in his life. I was hoping, but Georgia, I need you to know, this won't be easy. There will be complications, dangers, moments when you question if this was worth it. Life's never easy. At least this way, I get to build my dream and maybe fall in love with someone who looks at me like I'm extraordinary. That's more than most people get. So you're saying yes? To the shop? To us? To all of it? Georgia took a deep breath. I'm saying yes to trying, to seeing if we can build something good despite all the complications. But Ju, if you lie to me, if you put me in danger without warning, if you turn out to be different than who you're showing me now, I'm out. Immediately. No second chances. Fair. I can live with that. Sinju stood, crossed to the futon, took George's hands in his. Thank you for taking the risk, for trusting me enough to try. Don't make me regret it. I'll spend every day trying not to. He lifted her hands to his lips, pressed a kiss to her knuckles. When do you want to start looking at properties for the shop? As soon as possible, before I lose my nerve. Georgia laughed, nervous and excited. This is really happening. I'm really doing this. We're really doing this, Sinju corrected. Partners, in business and everything else, if you'll have me. One step at a time, Mafia boss. Let's build the shop first, then we'll see about the everything else. But the way she smiled at him, the way her fingers tightened around his, Sinju thought the everything else was already happening, whether they acknowledged it or not. Finding the right property took 3 weeks. They looked at 12 locations before finding the perfect space. A former body shop in Sodo, 2-bay garage with high ceilings, good bones, and enough square footage to expand. Zoning was right. The neighborhood had a mix of industrial and creative businesses, and the rent was within the budget Sinju had outlined. It's perfect, Georgia breathed, walking through the empty space with stars in her eyes. The lift system needs replacing, and we'd need to upgrade the electrical, but the structure is solid. Dad would have loved this place. Sin-Ju watched her envision it, where equipment would go, how to arrange the workspace, the office she'd build in the corner. Her passion was infectious, her expertise obvious. He'd made the right choice investing in her. "Let's do it," he said. "I'll handle the lease negotiations and initial renovations. You make a list of equipment needs and start building your client list." "Sin-Ju, this is really happening." Georgia turned to him, expression caught between joy and terror. "I'm really opening my own shop. You're really doing it, and it's going to be extraordinary." The renovations took 2 months. Sin-Ju hired contractors who asked no questions and worked with unusual speed. Georgia quit her job at Cornerstone Bistro. Margaret understood, even threw her a farewell party that made Georgia cry. Through it all, Sin-Ju and Georgia grew closer. They had dinner together 3 times a week, always at different restaurants to avoid establishing patterns. Walked through the construction site daily, Georgia directing changes while Sin-Ju made calls to secure specialized equipment. And slowly, carefully, they built something that looked remarkably like a relationship. "Tell me about your mother," Georgia asked one evening over Korean barbecue. They sat in a private booth, the sizzle of meat on the grill filling comfortable silences. "She was gentle, soft in a way my father never was. She volunteered at community centers, taught Korean language classes to immigrant children, believed that we had an obligation to help those with less." Sin-Ju flipped meat on the grill. "She hated what my father did, the violence and criminality, but she loved him anyway, tried to balance his darkness with her light. Do you think it worked? Sometimes. He was softer with her, more thoughtful, but after she died, he became colder, meaner, like the part of him that remembered how to be human died with her. Is that what you're afraid of? Becoming like your father?" Sin-Ju met her eyes. "Every day, I see his decisions in mine, his ruthlessness in my thoughts. The difference is I'm trying to fight it, trying to build something better. You're not him, Sin-Ju. You negotiate before you fight. You invest in people instead of just using them. You're building legitimate businesses and trying to transition away from crime." Georgia reached across the table, took his hand. "That's not your father. That's you choosing to be different. Because of you. You make me want to be better. I'm just the catalyst. You're doing the actual work." They kissed for the first time that night, in the parking lot after dinner, rain starting to fall, Seattle being perfectly Seattle. It was soft and sweet and felt like promise, like possibility, like maybe 2 complicated people could build something uncomplicated together. The shop opened on a cold January morning. Hayes Automotive Restoration, in clean, professional letters across the front. Inside, state-of-the-art equipment gleamed. Workspace organized with the precision of someone who understood flow and efficiency. Georgia stood in the center of her shop, wearing coveralls with her name embroidered over the heart, looking at what she'd built with wonder and pride. "You did it," Sin-Ju said, coming to stand beside her. "Everything you dreamed of. We did it. This doesn't exist without you." She turned to face him. "Thank you for believing in me, for making this possible. You made it possible. I just provided resources. The vision, the expertise, the sheer determination. That's all you." The first client arrived at 9 a.m., one of Sin-Ju's men bringing in a McLaren 720S that needed service. Word spread quickly through the exotic car community. New shop in Sodo, owner who actually understood complex systems. Discretion guaranteed. Within 2 weeks, Georgia had a waiting list. Within a month, she'd hired 2 junior mechanics, both young, both talented, both grateful for someone willing to teach them properly. Within 3 months, Hayes Automotive was profitable and growing, and through it all, Sin-Ju and Georgia's relationship deepened. They learned each other's rhythms, each other's fears and hopes and complicated histories. Fell in love slowly, carefully, building something real beneath the surface complications. "I need to tell you something," Sin-Ju said one evening. They were in his penthouse. Georgia had started spending nights there, her tiny studio apartment gathering dust. "About the organization, about transitions I'm making." "Okay." Georgia set down her glass of wine, giving him full attention. "I'm phasing out the protection rackets. Told our affiliated businesses they have 6 months to transition to legitimate security contracts or find other arrangements. Some won't make it, will go to competitors, but it's necessary. That's huge. How are your people reacting? Mixed. Dae Young supports it, sees the long-term benefits. Some of the older members think I'm being weak, that I'm betraying my father's legacy. There's been resistance, dangerous resistance, potentially, which is why I need you to be extra careful. Vary your routes to the shop, keep the security measures we discussed, trust your instincts if something feels wrong. Georgia nodded slowly. Is this because of me? Are you making these changes because I asked you to go legitimate? I'm making them because they're right, because I want to build something I can be proud of, something my mother would have approved of. You're the catalyst, Georgia, but the choice is mine. I'm ready to be someone different. And if your organization falls apart in the transition, if going legitimate means losing everything your father built, then I lose it. Some things are worth the risk. He pulled her close, kissed her forehead. You're worth the risk. Being able to look at myself in the mirror is worth the risk. Building something real with you is worth everything. I love you, Georgia said quietly. I know we haven't said it yet, but I do. I love you, Sin-Ju. All of you. The complications, the attempts to be better, the way you're fighting to be different than your father. I love all of it. I love you too. Have loved you since you fixed my car and asked for nothing. Since you looked at me and saw a person instead of a position. He kissed her properly, deeply. Thank you for taking the risk on me. Thank you for being worth the risk. The resistance came 2 months later. Georgia was closing the shop late, finishing a restoration on a '69 Camaro that needed to be ready for a client in the morning. Her 2 mechanics had left hours ago, and she was alone with engines and tools and the satisfaction of work well done. She heard the footsteps behind her too late. 3 men, Korean, dressed in black, moving with purpose. Georgia recognized the one in front. Park sang, Ho, one of Sin-Ju's men, one of the ones who'd been vocal about the organization going soft under young leadership. Park, she said, keeping her voice steady, hand moving casually toward the wrench on her workbench. This is a surprise. Sin-Ju didn't mention you were coming by. Boss doesn't know we're here, that's the point. Sang-Ho smiled, cold and humorless. You're the problem, Miss Hayes. You're making him weak, making him forget what the Choi family stands for. I think I'm helping him remember what matters beyond violence and territory disputes. You're helping him destroy everything his father built, and we can't allow that. Sang-Ho moved closer. Nothing personal, but you need to disappear. Without you, Boss will remember who he really is. Georgia grabbed the wrench, but 2 of them were on her before she could swing it. She fought. Years of self-defense training and growing up with 2 brothers meant she knew how to throw a punch. But 3 trained men were too much. A hand clamped over her mouth. She bit down hard, tasted blood, heard cursing. Someone hit her in the ribs, pain exploding, and Georgia saw stars. Then the shop door crashed open. Sin-Ju exploded into the space like a force of nature. Dae Young and 4 other men behind him. The fight was brutal and short. Sin-Ju moved with the kind of violence Georgia had never seen from him. Pure fury channeled into efficient brutality. Within seconds, Sang-Ho and his men were on the ground, bleeding, and Sin-Ju was pulling Georgia against him with shaking hands. Are you hurt? Did they? I'm okay. Bruised, but okay. Georgia clung to him, adrenaline making her shake. How did you know? Dae Young. He's been monitoring internal communications, saw hints of dissent. When I couldn't reach you, we came immediately. Sin-Ju's voice was rough with fear and fury. I'm so sorry. This is my fault. I should have seen this coming. Sin-Ju. Georgia pulled back enough to look at him. This isn't your fault. You can't control everyone's actions. I can control my own. And I choose this. He turned to face Sang-Ho, who was struggling to sit up, face already swelling. You're out, all of you. Out of the organization, out of Seattle, gone by sunrise. If I ever see you again, I'll finish what we started here. You're choosing her over family, Sang-Ho spat blood. Over your father's legacy? I'm choosing to be better than my father, to build something that doesn't require hurting innocent people to survive. And yes, I'm choosing her. Every single time. Sin-Ju's voice was steel. Get them out of here. Dae Young and the others dragged the 3 men away, leaving Sin-Ju and Georgia alone in the shop. The quiet after violence felt strange, heavy. This is what I meant, Sin-Ju said quietly, about the danger, about how my world could hurt you. And this is what I meant about being worth the risk. Georgia took his face in her hands, making him look at her. Sin, Jew, I knew what I was getting into. I knew there would be complications. This doesn't change how I feel about you. It should. You almost got hurt because of me. But I didn't, because you protected me. Because you chose me over people who've been with you for years. She kissed him softly. That means something. That means everything. I love you, Sinju breathed. So much it terrifies me. I love you too, and I'm not going anywhere. So you better get used to being terrified. The aftermath was complicated. Sang-ho and his men left Seattle as ordered, but word spread through the organization. The boss had chosen an outsider over his own men. Some saw it as weakness. Others saw it as evolution, proof that Sinju was serious about changing the Choi family's direction. A vote was called, unusual, almost unprecedented, but these were unusual circumstances. 25 members with voting rights, including Sinju himself. The question, did the organization support the transition to legitimate operations, or did they want new leadership? Sinju let the vote proceed without interference. If they don't want to follow me, I need to know. I can't lead people who fundamentally disagree with the direction. Georgia sat beside him in his penthouse the night before the vote, both unable to sleep. What if you lose? Then I step down, hand control to whoever they choose, and you and I build something completely separate from all of this. You'd walk away from everything your family built? For you? For a chance at a real life? Yes. In a heartbeat, he kissed her temple. Besides, I've been setting up contingencies, legitimate businesses, investments separate from the organization. We'd be fine. I don't want you to lose everything because of me. I won't lose everything. I'll lose the organization, maybe, but I'll have you. That's not losing, that's winning. The vote took place the next evening in a private room at a Korean restaurant. Neutral ground, no weapons, everyone present. Sin-ju made his case. The world was changing, law enforcement was getting smarter, and the old ways would eventually destroy them all. Going legitimate was survival, not weakness. My father built this organization on blood and fear, he said to the assembled men. But that's not sustainable. Times change. We adapt or we die. I'm offering you a future where we can build wealth without constantly looking over our shoulders, where we can invest in community instead of controlling it through violence. But I need your support. If you can't follow me in this direction, I'll step aside. No hard feelings. The vote was close. 14 in favor of Sinju's leadership, 11 against. Not a mandate, but enough. Thank you, Sinju said simply. To those who voted for change, we'll build something better together. To those who voted against, I respect your position, and there's no retaliation. You can stay or you can leave. Your choice. 3 men chose to leave. The rest stayed, and slowly, carefully, the Choi family organization began its transformation. 1 year later, Georgia stood in her shop, now expanded to 3 bays, employing 6 mechanics with a waiting list that extended 6 months. Hayes Automotive had become the premier exotic car restoration shop in the Pacific Northwest, known for expertise, discretion, and workmanship that honored the history and engineering of every vehicle. Sin-ju's organization had transitioned largely to legitimate operations, security consulting, import-export that actually went through customs, real estate investments. It was slower, less dramatic, but sustainable. Legal. Something his mother would have been proud of. Penny for your thoughts? Sinju asked, coming up behind her, wrapping arms around her waist. Just thinking about how much has changed. A year ago, I was serving overpriced pasta and dreaming about maybe someday opening a shop. Now I have this. She gestured at the thriving business around them. And you. It feels like a dream. Not a dream. Just what happens when someone extraordinary gets the opportunity they deserve. He kissed her neck softly. Speaking of opportunities and dreams, he pulled a small box from his pocket, and George's breath caught. I know we've only been together a year. I know this is fast. But Georgia, you changed my entire life, made me want to be better, gave me a reason to build something beyond survival. I love you more than I thought I could love anyone. He opened the box, revealing a ring that somehow managed to be both elegant and unique. A diamond set in platinum with smaller stones that caught light like stars. Will you marry me? Build a future with me. Let me spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you." Georgia felt tears streaming down her face, couldn't remember starting to cry. "Yes, God, yes. You ridiculous, wonderful, complicated man. Yes." He slipped the ring on her finger, and it fit perfectly, like it was made for her. Like everything in the past year had been leading to this exact moment. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "I love you so much. Thank you for being worth the risk. Thank you for taking it, for seeing something worth saving in a crime boss trying to go legitimate. You were always worth saving. You just needed someone to believe it." They stood there in the shop Georgia had built, surrounded by engines and tools and the physical manifestation of dreams made real, and kissed while Seattle rain fell outside and the future stretched ahead, full of possibility. Because sometimes the most extraordinary things start with a broken down car and a waitress brave enough to fix it. Sometimes love means risking everything for someone who's trying to be better. Sometimes the best investment you can make is in a person's dreams. And sometimes a $10 million hypercar dying at exactly the right moment is the universe saying, "Pay attention. Something important is about to happen." Sin. Jew had paid attention. Georgia had been brave. And together they built something neither could have achieved alone: a legitimate business, a transformed organization, and a love that proved even complicated people from different worlds could find their way to each other. "Come on," Georgia said, pulling back from the kiss with sparkling eyes. "Let's go celebrate. Dinner, champagne, the works." "Sounds perfect. Where do you want to go?" "Anywhere but Cornerstone Bistro. If I have to explain to Margaret that I'm marrying a former mob boss, she'll lecture me for hours about making good life choices." Sint Jew laughed, the sound free and genuine and full of joy. "Former mob boss. I like the sound of that. Current legitimate businessman and love of my life. That sounds better. Much better." He took her hand, the one with the ring that caught light and promised forever. "Let's go build our future, Georgia Hayes, one extraordinary moment at a time." And they did, together.